Hi, I'm Rick Reynolds, founder and president of Affair Recovery. Today I want to discuss a possible solution for answering the question why. 3 times this week, I've had couples in my office arguing about why, where the betrayed spouse is telling the wayward spouse why they did it, and the wayward spouse is saying that wasn't my motive or that wasn't my intent. And it's a struggle, a discussion I've seen countless times in my career. And it's understandable to me why the betrayed spouse really wants to understand and why it's healthy for a couple to be able to develop a common understanding of not only what happened, but maybe some of the whys to what occurred. Because it helps maybe the betrayed spouse figure out if it's possible to keep it from happening again. I think it helps the wayward spouse figure out areas that they need to address. But I think it's also hard to accept the reasons often given by the wayward spouse. At times, it's hard to accept what the wayward spouse says simply because in their responses, it's different than the story that the betrayed spouse is telling themselves as to why. And so they keep trying to get them to understand, the betrayed spouse keeps trying to get the wayward spouse to understand what the real reasons are, because those are the judgments they've made in their head. And rather than just trying to seek to understand the wayward spouse, the betrayed spouse, is really seeking to be understood. At times, it just doesn't make sense at all, because of the differences in human beings. The reasons I do something are very different than the reasons Stephanie does things. And so we can only assume another person's motives primarily by what it would mean if we were to do the same thing. So having different values and different people does, end up leaving different reasons. At times, I think people have trouble accepting the whys the wayward spouse gives, maybe because the wayward spouse hasn't really put effort into even figuring out the whys, and they're just sharing the moral justifications, or they're blaming somebody else, but they've never really done that introspection. I think it's always difficult simply because there's never going to be a good enough why to justify the pain and everything that's happened. But recently, a wayward spouse did something that I thought was really good, because they wanted to give their mate the whys as they had seen them, as they went through treatment. Now, to me, whys are something that it takes time to understand. And so this, for this person, was something that they had spent probably a year looking at. But I wanted to share a letter that she wrote to her mate as to the whys that she understood. And to me, I really liked this letter format. A rundown of whys. These are things that I've been able to identify as far as factors leading to a mindset that accepted unfaithfulness as an option. I put them into categories. General. Self-centeredness, self-absorption, in love with my image. Pride. It kept me in denial about the gravity of my actions and character defects. Focused on others' faults and magnified them in my mind while minimizing my own. Felt entitled to being validated by men. Lacked empathy. A tolerance of promiscuity, infidelity on TV since childhood. I even rooted for TV affairs since betrayed spouses were always portrayed as jerks. Sex was presented as a natural progression to characters feeling love. Relying on good intentions and inner vows such as, well, I'd never do anything like that, or I'll never do that again. Lack of accountability. Lack of transparency, especially with Christian women. Wrong thinking patterns, as outlined in Hope for Healing. Victim thinking, instant gratification, blaming, uniqueness. Everybody's doing it. The good one. I had a reckless attitude. I lacked courage to be authentic and to out myself, so I stayed in my shame, which led to thoughts of worthlessness, which held me to want people, especially men, to think well of me. So I would do things to impress and began to wonder what they thought of me after all. I needed to feel like I was not flawed. I stayed in denial. Staying in denial general kept the destructive cycle alive. Lack of true compassion for others. Lack of self-respect. Didn't use my voice and went along with sex even though I was uncomfortable about really doing it. Lack of general boundaries. Family background, another category. Became very good at hiding things early in life to survive emotionally. Believed my worth and normalcy were tied to having boyfriends or receiving attention from boys. My family had a culture of shame. Another category, interactions with men. I romanticized any attention from boys, lack of boundaries for interaction with other men after married, talking, texting, notes, emails, Facebook chat, Facebook comments, all done separately from my husband's knowledge. Not that I was necessarily keeping all of them a deliberate secret, just never included him in the knowledge of talking to those people in general and never seeing anything dangerous about it. Gave others windows into the marriage. Let conversations with some men become inappropriately personal. Felt more comfortable interacting with men than women because I mostly felt judged and like an outsider with other women. Problems in the marriage, another category. These aren't things that led me to be unfaithful, only problems that I chose to deal with in a destructive way. The problem wasn't the problem was my reaction to the problem. Early disillusionment. It wasn't all romance anymore. Felt a lack of emotional intimacy, which I blamed my husband for. But what I was doing was making emotional intimacy impossible. Not recognizing my husband's need to be as important as mine. Nor did I see that he felt those needs as intensely as I felt my own needs. Husband's total trust in me. I didn't allow my husband to ever see me as I was. I didn't trust him with my faults, callousness toward my husband. I minimized wounds and stuffed them and let them build into resentments. My lack of transparency and honesty. And this list wasn't even, everything that this person wrote. But what I appreciated about the effort was she took many things she had learned over the year and just kept making notes of what she had seen. And one of the things I believe it did for her husband was let him see that truly she was trying to self-reflect what was there and what she would want to be different. And I understand your mate may not be good at self-reflection, and so it might take time, and hopefully they would be willing to do things like Hope for Healing or do counseling, but it is an amazing gift to be able to give, I think, a betrayed spouse. I'll also say that it was important for this person's mate to be safe enough for them to even share this list. Because if they weren't interested, he could have responded negatively to that simply because he wanted her to see it from his perspective. Because I think, sadly, so often when we're really hurt, we keep seeking to be understood rather than seeking to understand. But I also thought that it was a novel approach, and it's something that might help some people. At the very least, it's a way for the wayward spouse to show concern for the betrayed spouse, letting them know that they're really trying to figure out why. To healing.